Okay, here we go. So tonight I'm going to read from Nisargadatta, and his book is I Am That. And you're all very familiar with that, I know. So here there's a questioner and Nisargadatta. So the questioner asks the question and Nisargadatta is going to answer it. So now the questioner says to him, you say that whatever you see is yourself. You also admit that you see the world as we see it. Well, here is today's newspaper with all the horrors going on. Since the world is yourself, how can you explain such misbehavior? And he says, Nisargadatta says, well, which world do you have in mind? And he says, our common world in which we live. Nisargadatta, are you sure we live in the same world? I don't mean nature, the sea and the land, plants and animals. They are not the problem, nor the endless space or the infinite time, the inexhaustible power. Your world is of desires and their fulfillments. Your world is of fears and their escapes. And that is definitely not my world. I do not even perceive it, except through what you tell me about it. It is your private dream world, and my only reaction to it is to ask you to stop dreaming. The guy says to him, well, surely wars and revolutions are not dreams. Sick mothers and starving children are not dreams. Wealth ill-gotten and misused is not a dream. Nisargadatta says, what else? A dream, the guy says, cannot be shared. And Nisargadatta says, well, nor can the waking state. All the three states of waking, dreaming, and sleeping are subjective, personal, intimate. They all happen too and are contained within the little bubble in consciousness called a me. The real world lies beyond that. So the guy says, self or no self, facts are real. And he says, of course facts are real. I live among them. But you live with fancies, not with facts. Facts never clash, while your life and your world is full of contradictions. Contradiction is the mark of the false. The real never contradicts itself. For instance, you complain that people are objectively poor, yet you do not share your riches with them. You mind the war next door, but you hardly give it a thought when it is somewhere far off in another country. The shifting fortunes of your ego determine your values. I think, I want, I must are made into absolutes. The guy says, well, nevertheless, evil is real. And he says, well, not more real than you are. Evil is in the wrong approach to problems, created by misunderstanding and misuse. It's a vicious circle. And the guy says, well, can the circle be broken? And Nisargadatta, a false circle need not be broken. It's enough to see it as it is. The guy says, but real enough to make us submit to and inflict indignities and atrocities? Nisargadatta, insanity is universal. Sanity is rare. Yet there's hope, because the moment we perceive our insanity, we are on the way to sanity. This is the function of the Guru, to make us see the madness of our daily living. Life makes you conscious, but the teacher makes you aware. The guy says, look, sir, you are neither the first nor the last. Since immemorial times, people were breaking into reality. Yet how little it affected our lives. The Ramas and the Krishnas, the Buddhas and the Christs have come and gone, and we are as we were, wallowing in sweat and tears. What have the great ones done? Whose lives we witnessed? What have you done, sir, to alleviate the world's thrall?
Wow.
Nisargadatta, you alone can undo the evil you have created. Your own callous selfishness is at the root of it. Put first your own house in order, and you will see that your work is done. The guy says, the men of wisdom and of love who came before us did set themselves right, often at a tremendous cost. What was the outcome? A shooting star, however bright, does not make the night less dark. Nisargadatta, to judge them and their work, you must become one of them. A frog in a well knows nothing about the birds in the sky. The man says to him, do you mean to say that between good and evil there's no wall? Nisargadatta, there is no wall, because there is no good and no evil. In every concrete situation, there is only the necessary and the unnecessary. The needful is right, the needless is wrong. Well, who decides? The situation decides. Every situation is a challenge which demands the right response. When the response is right, the challenge is met and the problem ceases. If the response is wrong, the challenge is not met and the problem remains unsolved. Your unsolved problems, that is what constitutes your karma. Solve them rightly and be free. The guy says, you seem to drive me back to myself. Is there no objective solution to the world's problems? Nisargadatta, the world's problems were created by numberless people just like you, each full of his own desires and fears. Who can free you of your past, personal, and social except yourself? And how will you do it? Unless you see the urgent need of your being first free of cravings born of illusion. How can you truly help as long as you need help yourself? Well, the guy says, in what way did the ancient sages help? And in what way do you help? A few individuals profit, no doubt. Your guidance and example may mean a lot to them. But in what way do you affect humanity? The totality of life and consciousness. You say that you're the world and the world is you. What impact have you made on it? Nisargadatta, what kind of impact do you expect? Man, the guy says, man is stupid, selfish, and cruel. Nisargadatta, man is also wise, affectionate, and kind. The guy, Why does goodness not prevail? Nisargadatta, it does. In my real world, even what you call evil is the servant of the good and therefore necessary. It is like boils and fever that clear the body of impurities. Disease is painful, even dangerous, but if dealt with rightly, it heals. The guy says, or it kills. In some cases, death is the best cure. A life may be worse than death, which is but rarely an unpleasant experience, whatever the appearances. Therefore, pity the living, never the dead. This problem of things, good and evil in themselves, does not exist in my world. The needful is good, and the needless is evil. In your world, the pleasant is good, and the painful is evil. So the guy says to him, well, what is necessary? Nisargadatta, to grow is necessary. To outgrow is necessary. To leave behind the good for the sake of the better is necessary. To what end? The end is in the beginning. You end where you start, in the absolute. Well, why all this trouble then? To come back to where I started. Whose trouble? Which trouble? Do you pity the seed that is to grow and multiply till it becomes a mighty forest? Do you kill an infant to save him the bother of living? What is wrong with life? Ever more life. Remove the obstacles to growing, and all your personal, social, economic, and political problems will just dissolve. The universe is perfect as a whole, and the parts striving for perfection is a way of joy. Willingly sacrifice the imperfect to the perfect, and there will be no more talk about good and evil. Well, the guy says, yeah, we're afraid of the better, and we cling to the worse. Nisargadatta. This is our stupidity, verging on insanity. So I'm interested in what you heard and what, if any, comments or questions you may have. The needful is good, and the needless is evil. In your world, the pleasant is good, and the painful is evil. What do you say? He says contradiction is the mark of the false. The real never contradicts itself. What about that?
Truth never changes.
I'm sorry?
Truth never changes. Constant.
Yes. 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 He's saying again and again, as they all say, the evil in the world comes back to us.
Yeah.
He says, you alone can undo the evil you have created. Your own callous selfishness is at the root of it. Put first your own house in order, and you will see that your work is done.
Didn't Jesus say something like that?
He may
About,
indeed.
yeah,
He
about
may
putting your own house in order.
He may indeed have, of course. Of course. So what does it mean? Put your own house in order. What does that mean?
Work on your own perceptions. Misperceptions, shall I say.
Well, we can't change the world. We can only change ourselves and our relation to the world.
Correct.
We have to start within ourselves. But what I'm wondering is, why does he take for granted that the guy who's questioning him is stupid and confused? The guy was another holy guru. I mean, he's asking good questions. I thought that was kind of harsh.
Well, you know what he's saying is that that guy is a symbol of all of us.
Yeah, I know, but some of us are okay.
So, but you know, like he says, we live in a stupid, cruel world. And for the most part, that's true. However, he also says there are people that are kind.
And questioning. The guy was
questioning, and people that are affectionate, and people that do care.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
Just took for granted. Well,
right.
Well, doesn't that, I mean, when the human comes in or the me, doesn't that, it goes in and out. It doesn't mean people are kind. It's not like a blank thing. It can go in and out, kindness, and because it's part of, I don't know how he said it, part of the growth, part of our personal growth. And I mean, that's how I experience it anyway, I think essentially that's my belief anyway, that we all have a goodness within us. It's just there's so many layers that can separate that part from the basic essence, you know what I mean?
Well, yes. The basic essence is consciousness, is awareness, which we all share.
Yeah.
Right? And yes, and that has not to do with this me that's capable of cruelty.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I thought it was interesting when when the guy asked him, well, what is necessary? Because if you ask yourself, well, what's really necessary? That would simplify life a great deal. But then he goes on to say, to grow is necessary. To outgrow is necessary.
Yeah.
To leave behind the good for the sake of the better is necessary. That expands the idea of necessity in a very interesting way.
To leave behind the good for the sake of the better. To leave behind the good for the sake of the better. Do we get complacent with our own goodness or our own perceived goodness, and we attach to that and we identify ourselves with that, and we create an image of ourselves with that, and we say, well, I'm a good person. So what else? I'm a good person. But what is leaving that behind? What does that really mean? Doesn't that mean putting a pin in the image that we have about ourselves? Right? Don't we all have images about ourselves and about each other? Right? And aren't those images what prevent us from really connecting? From having the necessary empathy and compassion?
I'm not sure I understand what that means.
Go on. What say again?
Say again, Janet.
I'm not sure I understand what that means. What is necessary compassion? What does that mean?
Compassion is love.
No,
Compassion.
but you use the term necessary. Necessary, to have necessary compassion.
Yes, necessary. That is what is necessary, is to have compassion.
Oh, I see. Okay.
That's what's necessary.
I
And
agree.
right? And
Yes.
right. And I think we have a hard time with compassion. Because I think what happens is we have compassion for these people over here,
Right.
but not for these people over there. We have selective compassion. And that makes us feel, well, I'm a good person. So we're stuck in this image of being a good person because we have selective compassion. But compassion can't.
And I think that keeps us from becoming a better person, because we are complacent that we are good enough or good.
Right.
And we do move on from that. So I think that's what he's saying, to leave that behind to be better.
That's right. That's right.
I think what's being implied is that to be aware of these emotions that you have, to use your awareness, and the pointing is not to judge these things, but just to see them as they are and to experience them. So I mean, we all have these talk about good and bad. I'm not an all good person. I'm not an all bad person. Depends on what the situation is. Sometimes I'm good. Sometimes I'm bad. Sometimes I'm really angry. Sometimes I'm not. But what I've learned is, or I'm learning to do, is to be aware of it. And if I can, not to rate it as being good or being evil or being bad, but just to see the emotion, just to be with it. And if I can do that, and it doesn't happen a lot, but when I can do that, it seems to melt that thing away. Whatever the intensity of it was, it really lowers the calories.
Yes. Well, it's interesting, Ugo, because what you're talking about is witnessing, or as Krishnamurti calls it, choiceless awareness.
Choiceless awareness, absolutely.
Choiceless awareness. And that's another word for witnessing.
Yep.
So
That's how you can do something. I mean, you want to know how to do things. People keep telling you, like Krishnamurti and Mr. Gadada, they tell you, do this, do that. How do you do it? This is, I really believe it. I mean, using this idea, using this pointer of choiceless awareness, and being aware of your feeling. I mean, when you get angry, when you're elated, or when you're pleased, when you're happy, when you're giggling, this is an emotion, and just to be aware of it. That emotion comes from the ego, blah, 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 blah. You can get into a whole story, but I think the whole thing is that to really be aware of it, not just not be in a discussing mode. We're discussing how you can be evil, how like this guy was going on and on about this, and how do you do that, and how do you this. That's all. There's no awareness of where that conversation is coming from. So if he could direct his attention to where his words are coming from, then you get a better idea of what your construct is, and that you think you're in a position to do something about it, if you so choose, and if you're willing to work at it.
Well, remember, the seeing is the doing. So the moment that there is an awareness of what has arisen, let's say anger, the moment there is an awareness, and Ugo, you said you don't name it, which is right. You don't name it. You just observe, you witness. There's a choiceless awareness of that emotion that has appeared, that has arisen.
Yeah.
And the seeing is the doing, because in the seeing, you can pull the plug on it. Or the plug gets pulled automatically. When you really see it, when you're fully present. And any emotion, let's take anger. It happens in the moment, right? It's only in the moment. Because that's the only place life is in the moment. So if we're able to be fully present with that emotion, fully present, not name it, not run away from it, not find different excuses for it, just totally stay with it. It's got no place to go. It withers. But what we tend to do is we see it, we see the emotion, and we immediately either try and escape from it because it's too painful. So we find all different escape routes, or we justify it. I have a right to be angry. Or we beat ourselves up. I shouldn't be angry. I'm a good person. I shouldn't be angry. This is what we do. So we never really stay with the thing itself. I think maybe that's what he means by what's necessary. What's not necessary is the analyzing of it. What's necessary is the choiceless awareness of it.
Well, he says here, life makes you conscious, but the teacher makes you aware. You know, there are,
Yes.
yeah, we can, we're all conscious, but it's the self-awareness that is the crucial element.
But we also are all aware.
Yeah.
There isn't one person listening to this who is not aware. Awareness is our nature. Awareness is our true being.
But you may not be self-aware. You can be aware of a lot of external factors.
This is true.
But he's talking about self-awareness.
That's right. This is true. This is true. We tend not to shine that spotlight of awareness back onto ourselves.
We're very self-conscious, right? But not self-aware.
That's probably true. That's probably true.
That's a good distinction.
Yes, yes. So, consciousness. Is there more than one consciousness in this teaching of non-duality? Is it like my consciousness, your consciousness, your consciousness? Are there different consciousnesses?
Yeah.
Or is there just one consciousness? Now, the content of the consciousness may indeed be different based on our conditioning, right? Based on our life experiences. The content may be different.
It's one consciousness, like there's only one awareness.
That's right.
It's the same.
That's right. That's right.
So in other words, when you say awareness, as you're speaking, it's also consciousness. They're almost synonyms.
That's right. That's right. And they are used interchangeably by many people.
Right. That confuses the hell out of me sometimes.
Well, you know, you're conscious and you're aware.
I think that's kind of a trick question, Evie, like if there's one consciousness or one or more than one. Because I think if you looked at consciousness, like let's say as the scope of, let's say, a table, and then you drew like multiple circles on that table, and each of those circles represented the content of individual people's thinking, you would say at that point that there are many different groups, you know, there's many different contents of thinking. And one ego might not be aware of another ego's thinking. But yes, there is only one consciousness, but I think that's our objective, right? Is to free ourselves from the limit of those smaller circles and become aware of ourselves as the whole circle. But or of the whole table, let's say. And when we do become aware of the whole table, then the content of each of those individual egoic consciousnesses we become aware of those as well. I think.
Well, what you just said, Chip, I'm just going to repeat back what I heard. And I think it's similar to what I just said before. There's one consciousness. And because that's the essence of the teaching of non-duality, there's only one consciousness. However, the content of each person's consciousness is like the background is the same. The foreground may indeed be different based on our conditioning and our life experience.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what's interesting? Isn't it true, though, that no matter how different our traditions and our cultures and our conditioning, is not the awareness, the consciousness of pain, isn't that the same in everybody? To different degrees, obviously. When you suffer a loss, what's the difference if I'm an American or I'm an Indian or I'm an African? What's the difference? The pain is the same, that pain of loss. So I think it's just so interesting how much we really are alike, all of us on this planet, that we truly are one. And why is it so hard to realize that, to see that, and to act on that?
Because the other identities are so strong. We live in groups, we're tribal, we live in different cultures, different national interests. That's where we all identify for security, for interdependence. Those identities obscure the oneness. But yes, you're certainly right. Even, but everyone in those separate groups, when they see a mother's pain of a loss of a child, let's say, it doesn't matter where you see it around the world, everybody can identify with that pain. That's an intuitive knowing that cuts through all the other conditioned identities.
Right. So this, like he was saying, to grow is necessary.
Yes.
Right. To outgrow is necessary. To leave behind the good for the sake of the better is necessary. Right.
Right.
So what he's talking about, I think, is he's talking about the transformation of the egoic self, which is that limited consciousness, which are the small circles on the table. So he's talking about the transformation from that limited self to the limitless self.
Right.
Right. Where in
Correct.
fact there is only one consciousness.
Right.
Right.
And I think one of the things, we get inklings of this when we're with somebody that we're close to, or we have a connection with, and there's like, we have, someone else is thinking something else and we share a thought. We have experiences with this, I think. Or you're thinking about somebody and they call you or something like that. I think those kinds of experiences are demonstrating for us that in fact, there is only one consciousness. It is available to us all, but we don't access it because we restrict ourselves to those small circles on the table, that we restrict ourselves to that egoic self.
Right.
And so I think that's, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. So I think that's what these great teachers are pointing us to. Relinquish the small self,
Right.
recognize that we are the limitless self, and then all the problems are gone. So that this questioner is talking about all the problems of the world. What problems do you have as the limitless self? So.
Right, exactly. That's right. That's right. But you see, we're not able to do that because the identification with this constricted, limited self is so strong. And that's part of I think, the fundamental meditative practice. is in daily life,
Mhm.
to have a choiceless awareness of that.
Right. So we are able to do it, right? And so
Yes.
and we are able to do it, and that's why we're doing those practices like choiceless awareness.
To loosen the other identities.
Right.
Right. So
Right.
we are able to do it. We just need to practice.
Yes.
Yes, we just
Or
need
we
to.
need to retrain ourselves so we can relinquish the identification with the small self or the limited self, and we can
That's-
re-identify with the limitless self.
Right. We've got to remember not to forget.
Right.
Right? To remember not to forget. Right. As best we can. And then, you know, someone could say, well, why should I bother with this? Right? Why bother? Why can't I'll just live my life the way I'm living it. It's, for most of us, it's pretty good because we're not in a position that so many people are in today, either ill, no jobs, worried about how they're going to
Yeah.
pay their rent. We could say, well, that's not us. We're okay. So why should I bother? And that's a good question. What does all this do for me?
If you're
That's-
not hurting, there's no incentive. I mean,
Yeah.
pain is an incentive. If everything is wonderful, talking to the wrong people in the pew, I mean, why any of us? Why me? Why I go through it? Why I'm doing this? Why I believe in all of this? Because I realize that I do witness and experience a lot of suffering in the course of a day. I get aggravated at things. I do this. I do that. I have discomfort. You want under the general term of suffering. Things don't go my way, and what this work is helping me to understand. It's helping me to understand that most of my problems come from I don't want to accept what is. I don't want to accept that I can't get through on the goddamn computer and there's something wrong, or that the mailman isn't delivering, or that the return phone call isn't coming, and so on and so forth, or that the mailman didn't leave that letter that I asked him to leave. You know, there's a whole bunch of things. And
Right.
it can really upset me. But what I find is that as I work with this stuff, I can see what's happening, and it doesn't have the only way I can describe it, there's no stars in the sky, there's no rockets breaking off. It's just that the suffering is less, and I can really appreciate the difference. And you know, it comes from having an understanding of how this thing works. And part of the problem why we, and I'm going to say all of us, have problems in this thing, because we got to be a little bit easy on ourselves. We've been conditioned since the time we popped out of the womb to be a certain way. And now we're stuck with that years and years and years of conditioning. And it just isn't something that you can turn the spigot off. For me, it takes me time. It's been, as I get more understanding of it, it's easier to do something about it, because it is up to me to do it. You can't do it. The book can't do it. They can point, they can suggest what's going on, but I have to take the time and the effort and put the time and effort in it to, if I want to resolve it, to take it to the end and see this thing through. So it's up to me. And, you know, it's not good or bad or evil. It's the way we're made up. And, you know, it's not something that I chose. It's something that happened to me and happens to all of us. You're not born with an ego. You develop this damn thing. And it's got good parts and it's got bad parts. And that's from day to day what you live with and you learn. That's enough talk for me.
Well, that's true. Well, it's true that. So your answer to the question of, well, what's in it for me? You're saying, well, what's in it is the ending.
Peace.
Is the ending of psychological suffering. The ending of psychological suffering, so that finally there can be some inner peace and the mind can quiet down and there's more clarity, so that when situations come up, one is better able to see it, to understand it, and to know what to do, to know the right action in that situation, because there's less psychological suffering. And that can only come when there's freedom from this me. And the only way we're going to get freedom from this me is to see it in action, in a very gentle, compassionate way. And not beat ourselves up, just see it. Inner peace. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Chip. Go on.
Sorry, Evie. I also think the other part of it is we all recognize that we're in a transitory world. You know, we might be comfortable in this moment, you know, but we recognize we're born, we spend X number of years, and we recognize we're moving along through this. Everything's in transition in this apparent world. And so as a result of that, we don't have peace, because our anchor is for most of our egoic self, our anchor is in this physical reality. So we don't really have a sense of peace or stability or security in that. So I think that's kind of like the motivator, really, underneath us all. We're transitory world. What are we moving into?
That's right.
How do we deal with this?
Absolutely. And because we're living in a transitory, because life is transitory, everything changes, nothing is permanent. So there arises in each of us fear. There is fear. Fear of not being, fear of death, fear of getting ill, fear of losing what we have. There's fear because we know that this is limited. However, does there have to be that fear?
It's a choice.
I don't even know if it's choice. Is there, I don't even know if it's choice. Do we have to have this fear? You know, I think it's so important to ask that question. Why this fear? And what is this fear? What is it? Where does it come from? When does it arise? And is it even real? Or is the fear based on time? Is the fear based on something in the past or something in the future? Right now, there's no fear. Now, that's different. I'm not talking about the fear if you're crossing a street and you see a bus coming at you. You best have some kind of instinctual and get yourself out of the way. I'm talking about psychological fear, which is what we suffer from. And that has to do with projecting into the future, dwelling in the past. And to be able to be choicelessly aware of that, I think that would be the greatest gift we can give to ourselves. As soon as that arises, because that's the disturbance in the peace of our true nature.
Yeah. The choice is when we start stoking it. Like it arises, and rather than just sitting with it, being with it, letting it diminish and dissolve, we stoke it.
Right.
We put some more oxygen on it. We give it some more life. We revive it. We keep it going. Then we start making the story even bigger.
Right. That's right. That's right. We get on the train with it and away we go.
Away we go.
We
And
get bombarded though in this world, and I think, you know, when we see what's going on around us, you know, it's very hard to disidentify with all of the things that we are on a daily basis bombarded with, you know, politically, health-wise, all of these things. You know, if I could live in my own world, it would be much easier to disidentify with all of the things that you're bombarded with. But to pull back and, you know, you go, you hear, and that's, I think, the hard part of what we're going through in life right now. It's very hard to disidentify, you know, and I think we need this to be able to help us, because right now I feel the world is overwhelming.
Yes.
It's interesting. I was talking with a woman today who has gradually made a lot of progress disidentifying from her image of herself as not being lovable. And so she reported that she feels a lot better. How does she feel better? She said she feels much more relaxed and free. So in the past, that strong image of not being lovable would make her say yes to a lot of people and situations that she really wanted to say no to. And then that would gnaw at her, cause a lot of tension and this feeling of being trapped and confined. So I think the feeling of being more free, more relaxed, those are some of the ways that the suffering ends at a personal level.
Yes. So, but what about what Bernie was saying when she said, but you know, the reality right now, the facts right now of this world,
those are external realities.
Are really overwhelming.
Well, imagine if you're dealing with the external overwhelming realities and you're saddled with a self-image that's shot full of insecurities and fears.
Yes, 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 yes. So then it becomes really important. It's like, it's almost like an opportunity, I'll say an opportunity, to see how there's an immediate identification, how the fear comes up, and suddenly in this now moment, I'm projecting what could be, right? Personally projecting what could be, because that's the fear, is the personal fear. There's empathy for people who are suffering. There's empathy for, your heart hurts when you hear about the people that are suffering, that are ill, who have somebody in the hospital and they can't go and be with that person. Your heart hurts for that person who's worried that he can't pay his rent. Yes, but there's no fear. The fear comes in when we identify with that and project ourselves that that's me, that's going to be me, that's going to be what I'm going to go through. We don't know. We have no control. So what we do know, and the only thing we do know, by the way, that's not a concept. The only thing we know is that we are here now, that we exist. Nobody has to tell us we exist. We know we exist. And right now, it's okay.
I don't think we can stop ourselves all the time from spinning and going into the future, reliving the past, but we can give ourselves time during the day to take a rest from it and be here now, or, you know, and just let that stuff go.
Yes.
So I find that like I will get myself completely worked up watching the news or something, and then I will say, let me shut this off for a while. Let me just be. And then you can take a rest from it. But I don't think you can escape it all the time. Sometimes you will project or you will spin out of control. So
Yes,
you could just hope for some rest at some time.
yes, yes. But there's an awareness when we're doing that,
Yes.
right? There is an awareness when we're doing it, and we can pull ourselves back into the now. We can do that.
It's a practice.
Yeah.
It's a practice to actually begin to see how something triggers us from the past, and then we start to project forward. When one realizes that that's what's actually going on, then the practice comes in to say, wait a minute here. I see what's going on. And when that starts to happen and that practice is put in place, and it's a dedicated practice, the desire to even watch the news becomes less and less. Like, unless I'm going to get up and go off to some land because I have the time and space, what's even the point of me watching it right now? Is it going to change my response system to it? You know, I say it, my mother was very addicted to watching the news. So it was something, you know, it went on day and night for her, and she believed that her worry was actually necessary.
Oh,
So it was, you know, for me, it's like, I'll read the updates, you know, like the New York Times updates and things like that, but I'm not going to sit there and watch it all day long. Not going to change my reality. And so I think that takes back to like what was being read about in the book. Like, yeah, it's going on over there, but it's the way it changes globally is by changing each and every individual. And then as I change, my children look at me and they want what I have. So they start to say, hey, can you teach me how to meditate? Hey, how did you get there? And that's, you know, the best sermon is a good example.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it changes.
Well, that may be true, but the reality is that everyone is not doing this kind of a practice. So, you know, as some other people have said, you know, the way the world is today, you know, it's hard to, as Bernadette said, it's hard to disidentify. You could turn off the news and on some level, you know, avoid whatever it is it evokes in you, but it's still there.
Yeah.
And I do think the only answer is the awareness, and that, you know, what I would say is if you had the awareness, then you could watch the news perhaps, and because of your awareness, it will have a different effect on you than just turning it off, or, you know, not watching it, or watching a lot of it.
that's true. That's a good point.
Yeah, but I at this point, I just don't even see the point of it, of like watching it constantly.
Okay, well, that's a personal choice.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't matter. It's right.
It's like when something just dissolves, when you begin to see what's really going on and you become aware of what's happening within me, in my body, the need and necessity for certain things are just not that important anymore. You know, if I want inner peace, that's a choice I make by staying within, not going outside of me, unless I'm going outside because I'm in a state of mind where I actually can put my boots on and get out there and help with a situation. If I'm not in a situation where I can, then I don't really see the point of watching it. So it's personal choice. I agree.
Right. Personal choice.
Again, I think a lot of the personal suffering comes for me from when I watch the news is not accepting what is. They're a bunch of idiots. they're idiots. You know, you want to be judgmental or whatever it is, or they're buffoons, or they have a political bias, and they're going to spin whether you're on CNN or on Fox News or on MSNBC. And you know, I mean, how much of a bad pie do you want to eat? So, you know, so you know, at some point, with what we're learning, you realize these things are stirring up the emotions. Hey, I think I'm going to go for a walk.
That's right.
I mean, you know, the thing is that I can only do that for myself. I can't do it for anyone else out there.
Right.
I can't turn off your TV or have you go out for a walk or whatever. I just have to accept that all I can really do is for myself.
That's right.
And the other thing that I have to accept is that a little bit of knowledge. I got some Harper's Weekly stacked away in there that go back to about the 1880s or 1890s. Harper's Weekly now, 1880s. You read that, you take the date off, and it almost looks like, it almost feels like they're writing about what's happening right now. And this has been going on and on and on and on and on. So, you know,
that's right.
It's election year. This is the Super Bowl of the politicians. So, you know, let them have fun. But I have to learn to just back off and not let myself get drawn in, because every once in a while I start to have an argument with the TV set, and that ain't going to work. I mean, that TV set is only going to put out. It's not going to take anything in. So that's when, thank God, the awareness comes in, and then maybe I can turn the TV off.
Okay.
I
Well,
want to just say, I have an announcement to make. I spoke with Ira, and we're not meeting next week, but in 2 weeks we will meet again. And he is going to give a course on the Bhagavad Gita. Now, the Bhagavad Gita is a real important book for guidelines in living in a practical way. And actually, I just want to tell you, because I pulled up this thing from Mahatma Gandhi, and he said, I confess to you that when doubts haunt me, when disappointments stare me in the face, and when I see not one ray of light on the horizon, I run to the Bhagavad Gita and I find a verse to comfort me. And I immediately begin to smile in the midst of overwhelming sorrow. So Ira told me to, I'll send all this information out to you. But he asked that if you can, pick up a copy of the Bhagavad Gita. It's not necessary, but if you can, you might get it from a library. You might get it on Amazon. It might be interesting for you just to look over. I think you're going to find Ira's particular teaching of the Bhagavad Gita extremely powerful.
so this will go on for a number of weeks.
It'll go on for a few weeks. He's going to pull out the essence of each chapter. And the idea is to help us with guidelines in living in today's world in a very practical way.
So not next week, the following week.
So we'll meet in 2 weeks. I'll send out the email with all the information about this. And I do hope you'll all join, because I know it's going to be really good.
Evie, is there a particular version or translation that he would like us to get hold of?
I asked him that. He said, whatever. Now, this is the one that he reads from and the one that I have. Can everybody see this?
No.
All right. It's Bhagavad Gita Bahasa, Bhasya. And it's from Sri Shankaracharya.
Shankaracharya.
You know, with Shankara.
Send that out, Evie?
All right.
Can you send it
I will. What I'll do is I'll even try and take a picture of it. And
Okay,
I
great.
will send out the copy that I'm sure he's going to be reading from. But there are many versions of it. And he said it didn't much matter, but you might like this version of it. So,
We'll see everyone in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Buona sera.
Bye-bye.
Benacetta, have a
Ciao.
wonderful 2 weeks. Stay well, everybody.
You
You
too.
too.
Ciao.
Everyone.
Be
Ciao,
happy.
ciao.